Hello, everyone, and welcome to Your Daily Detroit, sharing what to know and where to go in Southeast Michigan, coming to you from our beautiful studio at Tech Town in the Paris of the Midwest.
Yes, sir.
Detroit, Michigan. I am Jer Stays, and across the table from me is none other than the excellent Norris Howard, who is also royalty.
Yes, the Prince of Bright Mo returns back one more time. And before we get started talking about anything here in Detroit, I just want to send our condolences out to the people of Georgia. Another school shooting in America
That we apparently can do nothing about.
that just we can't do anything about, ladies and gentlemen. So I just implore you, as we sit in an election year, to think about the people who care about such issues and think about the people who don't.
Well, and, we've had some of these issues in Metro Detroit lately. We haven't really gotten into it because we're not really into the crime and punishment beat. We're more into the solutions beat.
Yeah.
But we had issues at the state fair
Yep.
out in Novi. We had issues in Romulus over a football game. And then there wasn't a shooting, but it was definitely disorder. Did you see the people twerking on the front of the Dexter bus over the weekend?
All right, so I'm going to just say this, and I'm going to say this right now. Two of those things are tragedies. That last one is just unbridled joy and foolishness. And I'm going to be honest with you. I know that bus driver didn't look amused.
Oh, that bus driver looked like going, oh, no, I'm going to be on World Star.
Yeah,
Like, that was his look.
He was quite nonplussed, but that was just funny to me. That was hilarious to me.
It's not necessarily like great regular behavior, shall we say?
No, it's not, but it is funny. I'm sorry, it's funny.
It is absurd.
It's absurd. It is funny. That is a Boondocks episode made manifest.
I'll put a link in the show notes in case you didn't see it. It was kind of wild. It was like the club was like on the outside of the Dexter
on the
bus.
hanging on the bus. Yeah, it was wild.
I'm surprised that GMAC Cash hasn't made a rap about it yet.
Yeah,
Or at least put it into a line.
Yet is the key. Yet.
All right, we're going to talk about 3 stories and then get into a feature conversation because we're going to talk a little bit about the Detroit People's Food Co-op because some listeners highlighted some stuff to us. But before we get into that, we'll talk about 3 stories around town. First off, workers at the Marathon Oil Refinery in Detroit went on strike Tuesday. These are 800 members of Teamsters Local 283. They've been trying to get a new contract since January, but talks have not been going well. The workers want better pay and schedules. They say Marathon's been making lots of money, but not sharing enough with them. Marathon says they're disappointed and that they can keep the refinery running without the union workers. They don't expect any problems with fuel supply. This is pretty big because the refinery makes a lot of gas and other products for the metro region. It'll be interesting to see how this plays out. Now it impacts everything. Now, I did see online, and I shared this on our threads, independent gasoline market expert and Daily Detroit guest, he's been here before, Patrick DeHaan, you can follow him at Gas Buddy Guy, says that for now, it's likely refinery operations are not affected. He says the company is right with this, and gas prices should continue nationally on the way down, with the national average possibly hitting under $3 a gallon soon. That Marathon plant is the center of a lot of controversy, but also, let's be honest, it's also kind of crucial with our carbon-based economy.
Yeah, and the thing about it is that this follows a wave over the past, I would say, 4 to 5 years of collective action that we've been seeing nationwide. And I think it's very interesting to look at it as we begin to have more substantive conversations about what is the future of oil and gas in the country. And, according to a statement from Jeff Trikoff, who's an operator at the refinery, and this is reported on by WXYZ, he says that, Marathon made record profits for the last few years. They keep ramping up production and they keep cutting costs, but they don't want to come to us and give us competitive wages, and they don't want to increase a work-life balance or even just morale in the plant. And I think that's a really interesting at that last point, talking about morale in the plant, because as we explore or at least return back to a more traditional work environment in the post-COVID society.
Well, and this is the kind of industry where they never really went away.
They never stopped. But that doesn't mean that those conversations didn't seep into those industries. And I think as we look more to what is the future of labor in the country, I think we're going to see a ton of more collective action. Like I said, SAG-AFTRA went on strike. UAW went on strike. various teachers union on strike. There's a hotel workers union on strike, mostly on the West Coast and on the East Coast. We're going to see more of this as we keep seeing corporations reach record profits.
Dovetailing that, workers at a GM and LG battery plant in Tennessee just joined the Detroit-based United Auto Workers Union. This is a big deal because it's only the second battery plant in the U.S. to be unionized. About 1,000 workers at this plant signed up to join the UAW. This follows a similar move at another plant in Ohio last year. This is part of a larger trend where the UAW is trying to make inroads, sometimes successfully, sometimes not. This is important because as car companies switch to making more electric vehicles, the battery plants are a crucial part of all of this stuff. The union wants to make sure workers in this field are protected and have good working conditions. And, you know, it takes three. The company has to accept it, which they did. The union may want it, but also the workers have to want it. And I think what we're seeing is a little bit more indication that more and more workers seem to want it.
More and more workers seem to want it, and I think it actually behooves a lot of these corporations and a lot of these big companies to start accepting them because, you know, we could eventually reach, I don't want to say like this critical moment because I feel like that's a little cliche, but I do think the more we see collective action, the more we're going to see the benefits of those collective action actually pay dividends for some of these companies. If people want to work for you, we saw it happen with Google at the turn of the century, right? Where that just was the place everyone wanted to work. If you had anything tangentially related to Google, you wanted to work there because they had the perks, they had the time off, they were pioneers in the work from home stuff. Like you could do so much and you just had so much opportunity to work there. And now sort of I don't want to say the inverse, but being a union shop, people are starting to see the benefits of that. And I think a lot of these corporations better wake up because I feel like the more you fight against that, the more people are going to look and just say, I'll just go work elsewhere.
Well, let's switch some gears and talk about chain restaurant expansion because I know that a lot of people are into the food of Metro Detroit. This one's going to be a bit more controversial, though, as Chick-fil-A is making a huge push, according to the company. There will be new locations, and there will be about 2,500 jobs involved. So, like, a lot of jobs. So, give you an idea, like, these Chick-fil-A jobs are more than 1,000 jobs at the plant that we just talked about, and more than the 800 jobs we talked about at Teamsters. It's going to be about Chick-fil-A workers in Ann Arbor, Auburn Hills, Chesterfield Township, Clinton Township, Detroit, Fort Gratiot, Lincoln Park, Orion Township, Roseville, and Taylor. Chick-fil-A is a bit of a controversial brand, especially with a number of our listeners. It is interesting, though, to see not only that they're growing, but they're finding plenty of business. They wouldn't be growing despite the controversy. Now, I'm not trying to wash away the controversy around them because there are a lot of communities that have a lot of issues with them, including the LGBTQ plus community. But it's not stopping people because it seems like we value chicken over everything else.
Well, we do. And the thing is, man.
The royal we. I don't know if us
the royal
too.
we. The royal we. Here's what I guess frustrates me, not just about Chick-fil-A, but just about this in general. It's the same thing with like the Sheets conversation.
Which there was a line.
There was.
And there were people parked in empty fields across the street really pumped about this. And it's like I get this feedback, and then often in like our member Discord, people be like, why?
Bread and
blood. I feel like
Because
it's two different worlds out there.
bread and blood. We've been the same since the beginning of time, okay? If you give us spectacle and you give us food, we will show up. And like that's the thing, man, that really frustrates me, I guess, about like, you know, you said this is more jobs than in that refinery plant. But what's the quality of those jobs? What's the pay for those jobs? What are the protections for those jobs? Like you're still going to be a $16 an hour at will company or whatever, even if you
you won't be working Sunday.
Yeah, you won't work Sunday, cool. But even if you're like at $18, okay, you'll be at will, you had no protections, you won't have the same level of guaranteed time off, all this stuff that really just human beings should have. And because it's food service, you just won't get. We talk about a lot of the jobs that came back post-pandemic, but we didn't talk about what kind of jobs were they. We didn't talk about what kind of jobs that people had to start taking. There was a time, Jerry, in our lives, our lifetimes, where everybody who worked at McDonald's was like 20 and younger, and the manager might have been 30.
Well, and then there was like there was the older people too, like on the other side of their career, on the sunset.
Exactly, like the post-retirement people who just wanted something to do. right?
Make
But
a little extra money,
yeah.
see some people.
But now, working those type of jobs are necessities for a lot of people. And I feel like we have done such a disservice to the quote unquote middle-aged people of our country. Folks my age and a little bit older who they should be working desk jobs. They should be working careers in offices somewhere, being middle management, so on and so forth. But they've not been afforded that dream. And so we have to make 1,000 more Chick-fil-A's for people to go work at. And none of that moves me. Is it jobs? Sure, it's jobs. Net positive. It's better than nothing. But I just think we should be doing so much better on the jobs front, period, nationwide.
Let's take the lens a little bit more local, thanks to a number of listeners who sent me some interesting conversations in the community around the Detroit People's Food Co-op. Now, this is not something I would normally just wander into as a topic, but I am a neighbor of it. I shop there on occasion. And I felt like, Norris, you're somebody who is very plugged into the community as well. But it's interesting to me because this People's Co-op was 14 years in the making, recently opened. If you don't know, it's in Detroit's North End, Euclid and Woodward, just outside of Greater Downtown. Pretty easy to access, parking lot, all the other stuff. But a lot of people talking about how they had never heard about it, how they've never shopped there. And when I go there, this is a place that is devoted with a mission of black food security. Look, I'm not judging that. I go shop there, right? Like, I actually think it's good to take money and support that because that's an important cause. But a lot of people are feeling like it hasn't gotten as much of the warm welcome as I think people expected because it did work so hard. It did raise this money to make it happen. It was a huge project. It's a landmark project in my mind. Like, it is important for the community to exist, even though it's not for me. I mean, I can use it, but it's not for me, and that's okay.
Yeah. And that's okay.
That's good.
Yeah.
But it opens up a larger conversation of like, where are people doing things? Because I cannot imagine if you care at all about the Detroit conversation that you haven't heard about this thing. But that's just me.
But people haven't heard about it because, to be perfectly frank with you, if it didn't happen on Instagram, it might as well not exist for a lot of people and many people in the city, especially people my age and younger. The more we talk about things, first of all, there's a lack of education, obviously, not just in getting the word out about the food co-op, but like, what is a food co-op? I guarantee if you
I think a lot of people in the feedback were saying, do I have to be a member? And no, you do not have to be a member to shop there. I feel like I'm doing an ad, but I'm not being paid by them in any way. They don't even know me. But this is my
point, Jared. But you're plugged in. And you're somebody who's done research, and
I read a news article. I don't know if I did research,
but you know what a food co-op is.
I knew it was one before this.
Exactly. Conceptually, I would argue that there are probably tens of thousands of people in Detroit who do not.
The other night I was talking to somebody on a completely different topic. This is a kind of repeat of that conversation in that we have to remember where people are actually at in the Metro Detroit conversation and what they're familiar with. And so many things that those of us who have traveled a bit, or for me, 25 years covering the city, born on Van Dyke and Mack until my front porch fell off. These are things like for me that are just, we know what this is. But there is so much education, whether it's how you handle streets, so they're not just like wide, giant Frogger zones, or what a food co-op is, or these things that are just part and parcel of urban fabric or city life. We've gone so far away from it, we've forgotten what city life is like.
Yeah, well, not just that. It's that we've never had to exist in that context because of the population bleed over 50 years, right? Food co-ops could be a thing in New York because there was always people in New York. They could be those things in other towns because those towns have always had those types of people. What reason did the city of Detroit have to even conceptualize a lot of that stuff when so much of the city services either were depleted, removed, or you had enough services, you had enough gas stations or grocery stores or whatever, you had enough so people could get by. The thing about it is, and as we talk about the Detroit People's Food Co-op, which again, I've been to, it's great, it's fantastic.
It is a bit pricier.
It's pricier, but also location. My conceptualization of that part of Woodward is a no man's land because it's that close to Highland Park. And so for a lot of people, that strip of Woodward just might as well not exist. And it sounds terrible to say, but that is how a lot of people
But
think of
that
it.
strip has changed a lot in the last 10 years.
It has, but if you
But you
have
don't
no
see it
reason
because
to
there's
go,
no media coverage up there. You won't see the new murals. You won't see, like, there's conversations about changing the North End, but that doesn't register anywhere outside of the North End.
No.
Most people think the North End, like, there's a North End in Royal Oak. I've had people literally be like, hey, you in Royal Oak? No.
That's what I'm saying. You have to talk to people where they are. You have to recognize that there is a gap. There's a rift in the knowledge of the area of North End because, people have been okay with ignoring it for the better part of 25 years.
I also think, though, that there's a rift in local news. Like, there's a real rift in how we get information, which is evidenced by the precipitous declines of things you see that cuts at Axios. We're trying to do more stuff here and trying to find out how do we reach people and also somehow keep the bills paid. Because it's really hard to connect all these things and where are people at and what will the platforms actually do. And there's dangers in leaving all of your news to only algorithms. There's also a responsibility, like, to me, if you care about these things, if you're somebody who's like, oh, I'm really about whatever topic and responsibility, whatever topic, I would feel like you would also then actually keep up on it. But maybe I'm asking too much.
You are.
Thanks, man. Let me go take a shot of whiskey right now.
Yeah, no, I think you are. And I'm not saying I agree with that, but I think for a lot of people, they don't want to watch the news. I don't know why. I disagree with that, but I think they don't want to watch the news.
Well, I mean, the news format's one of the reasons we can exist is that it's a different format.
It is a different format, but at the end of the day, you need to be able to know what's going on in your community, and the local news is still the best way for you to find that out from the vast majority of people.
Well, that's what stunned me, and it shouldn't, but there was coverage at every single TV station I know of this place. Multiple stories as it was built, and yet I read Facebook thread after Instagram after whatever, people saying they had never heard about it. And I'm like, none of it even like trickled out?
Because I hate to put it this way.
Like, do they just not have any reach anymore?
I hate to put it this way, and I know a lot of people are going to not like what I got to say, but it's not sexy. Grocery stores ain't sexy, all right? Unless they're a big brand. Myers, Target, that's sexy.
But we are so obsessed with big brands,
We are.
here.
It's
We
big
are
brands.
here. Big car companies, big brands. That is Detroit culture. I hate to say it.
That's what we want. We want big brands. A food co-op don't move us because we feel like that's a food co-op. I ain't about to shop there. Remember the fanfare when Whole Foods first opened here? Remember when that was like...
I remember the party. I went to the party.
The huge deal that it was because a brand like Whole Foods was willing to take a chance on
Rivertown
Detroit.
Meyer, which is still well shopped.
Very well shopped. In my opinion, they need to recreate that footprint in many more pockets across the city because I think that works. The point is that people know the Meyer brand. People know the Kroger brand. People know Aldi. People know these brands. The Detroit People's Food Co-op pops up and nobody cares because nobody knows that brand.
Is that the same in like New York or, I mean, Chicago's actually had some mixed results with food co-ops. Some cities have had mixed results with food co-ops.
In Chicago, but Chicago is also kind of this in a similar boat when it comes to stuff like brands. They are very much so in that Rust Belt, Midwest sort of style of thinking.
But there's also a lot more people within the dense area.
It is, and that's why certain things can succeed. But I think, the Midwest is very much, I mean, you got to think a lot of those brands were born here. Meyer, Kroger, Target, all those places started in the Midwest.
And a Kroger quality can really vary depending location to late. People are like, oh, I really want a Kroger. I'm like, okay, but which Kroger do you want? Because Kroger doesn't mean the same thing everywhere.
No, but the point is that's what we really want because that's what we're used to. That's what we grew up with. They don't know anything about Meyer or Kroger on the West Coast. They all go to Safeway. For us, that's what we want. And unfortunately, I feel like a food co-op almost feels like shopping at the dollar store.
How do we change that conversation? Or how do we at least help push that a little bit way forward? Because of the math and whatever, without the food co-op, it's important that exists there because otherwise there wouldn't be that there. Because if the math works, those places are going to open up. The co-op creates a thing. It also creates a market for locally produced food, for all these different things. I think one of the challenges is that when you open in that area, you have a very price-sensitive population.
Yep.
Oh, I'm going to say something probably not great. I wonder if a black-focused food co-op that has higher prices would have done better in a Southfield.
At least closer to it, yeah. If the People's Food Co-op would have probably been somewhere on the northwest side or even the northeast side, I think it might have done better. And I think the reason why you say that,
I'm not saying that it's bad, but
I'm not saying it's bad, but I also think you got to think about the optics of it as well, because there are a lot of people who probably have tried it and then only saw people that looked like you shopping there.
There are days where I am the majority population there.
But with that comes a perception. With that comes a assumption of who that store is for. And I think, unfortunately, the People's Food Co-op, listen, the customers they get are the customers they get. They want everybody's money at the end of the day. But they could have done a better job at letting it be known that this is specific. I mean, it should have been getting shouted from the rooftops, not just from the time that they open, but consistently. I haven't seen anything about it in my feeds and my algorithms, and I'm constantly looking for places to shop for food. That's one of the cool things I love to go do. Like, a grocery run does not bother me.
I literally posted on our Instagram stories, and I got just a raft of people, sending me stuff, and I'm like, wait, we've covered this like 4 times. Mm-hmm. But then it's like, boom, it hits in a different way.
Yeah.
I'm just kind of bewildered and stunned, because for somebody who is like plugged into Detroit stuff, I'm like, of course there's the co-op. Of course it's there. Of course it's this. But it really shows me like how big that gap's getting.
It is. It's getting large, and the only way that we're going to be able to close it is not just meeting people where they are, but dispelling a lot of fears and assumptions, not just about food co-ops, but about a lot of things in the city. Like, the food co-op is a part of the conversation of just like Detroit and Midtown ain't for me. Like, it's thrown into that conversation because of its proximity.
Do you think that the co-op ended up getting coded? Yep. Even though it literally is like in their food security, like black food security.
Literally FUBU.
Right. But did it get coded as white?
Yes, it did. It flat out did. And of no fault of their own, by the way. The market was what it was because there's a certain demo in this town that knows. Co-op? Yeah, that knows what a co-op is and is going to patronize one. And I'm sorry, the average black person ain't that demo. They're not.
So where do we go from here? Let's be positive.
I think this conversation off rip is good, but I think where we go from here is we got to de-negative our conversations, right? Every conversation, I think, around a lot of this kind of stuff is so coded as negative that we've got to reframe it. So when we talk about like, oh, Detroit food security, that's like negative coded, right? Because we're talking about, oh, people can't get food. Like, that's depressing, right? No, just say, new grocery store. That's how everything in this town has to be coded. Because if not, people are just going to be reminded of how much it sucked for 25 years.
Is that part of the issue with a number of social justice and other issues? As much as we've talked about food security on the show multiple times, we have multiple guests. You listened before you even came on the show. You know we've wrestled with a number of these issues, but then we get hit when we have a positive conversation saying we're not acknowledging it. But I think we live it every day. We know it. Like, I fully acknowledge these are issues.
Yeah, and I just think, unfortunately, when we're talking about brick and mortar businesses in the city of Detroit, it's got to be through the veneer of, like, new, big, shiny thing. Because the moment you kind of put it in that context of, oh, we're addressing a need, there's going to be one segment of the community that's like, I didn't need that. There's another segment of the community that say, yeah, we needed it, but it's not for me. And then we're going to have another segment of the community that says, I can't afford it. So off the rip, we've bifurcated the community outside of just saying new, shiny thing, come visit.
I would love your thoughts. I think it's going to get people's brains turning a little bit. I'm not saying either of us are right or wrong on it. It's an interesting conversation. dailydetroit@gmail.com. Anything that we are talking about. Interesting if you've gone to the co-op, if you've enjoyed it, what's your experience been, all that kind of stuff. And if you haven't been, I really encourage you to go. Like, seriously, people say, oh, I need easy parking. You got easy parking. You got bike racks for days. You're right off of Woodward.
And the produce is A1. Like, you really should go.
Yeah. So go check it out and support things, right? Because, like, if you don't know, and I really believe in, like, sticking your beak into things and, like, exploring. That's part of the mission of Daily Detroit is, you know what? Whether you agree with us or not, go and explore the thing because I think it's important. Kind of open up your horizons a little bit.
Yeah, yeah, 1,000%. And even if you just go in and just check it out, or you just, maybe it might be too pricey for you or whatever, just go spread the word.
I don't think it's that like there's a lot of things that are not pricey with it. The thing is that people don't understand the idea of like if you're going to do like a fully free range raised chicken that like had joy through its life, it's going to cost more than the cheapest chicken you buy.
Yeah,
that was
it
kept
is.
up in a little box the size of my laptop.
Yeah, absolutely it is. But also, you got to recognize where you at. You got to recognize where you at. Flat out.
Would love to hear your thoughts. dailydetroit@gmail.com. Norris Howard, always so good to see you.
And it's always good to be here.
With that, I'm Jer Stays. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you to our members on Patreon, patreon.com/dailydetroit, who help us have these fearless conversations around what's happening in Metro Detroit. As always, remember that you are somebody, and we'll talk tomorrow.